Yeah. Well, it's an honor to be here. Thank you very much to everyone. Today we'll talk about Hotwire Native and how it's like the great mobile hack for me. First of all, as you already know, I'm Daniel Medina. I'm 30 years old. I'm from Mexico. And I've been pretty much a full stack developer and my whole life, my whole career. I'm also a tech lead at Telos Labs. And yeah, before these events, I want to make it like very clear. I had like zero experience with mobile development. So like many of us, we work in Rails, but we haven't done any mobile development. So yeah, the objective of this talk is walk you through all the process for transforming the official conference app that Telos Lab did into a native iOS application using Hotwire Native. So yeah, I will teach you like all the flow that I learned in the process. So before we start, I have to talk a little bit about the app, the conference, the official app for this conference. It's an open source Rails application developed by the Telos team. It's designed to help organizers to create and manage conferences with really ease. It's a fully functional PWA. Everything Eddie just talked is already in this app. That's a QR code to the application. It's also using all the new stacks from Rails. It's using also Hotwire, Turbo, and Stimulus. And it was previously used in the Rails World 2024 in Canada. So now this app is taking the next step into mobile with Hotwire Native. I'm not here to explain the deeps inside Hotwire Native, but just in a nutshell, it's a framework that helps you out to create native applications using your existing Rails web application. So yeah, that's pretty much what it does in a high level. So well, let's start of how was the process. Okay. The first thing I did, remember, I had zero experience with this. I couldn't start any other way than buying the Joe Maselotti's book. It's called Hotwire Native for Rails Developers, and I'm a Rails developer. This guy, his nickname is the Hotwire Native guy. So I'm pretty sure that he knows a few tricks more than I do. I also want to point out that this was my main guide for doing this transformation. So yeah, I have. If you are into this, I recommend you to buy the book. It's currently on beta, but yeah, it's coming up with new stuff every day. Oh. Okay, well, the first thing you have to do is go to the Xcode, create a new project. It's very. Oh, it's not showing the pointer. Yeah, you basically create a new project, go create an app, and it's very important to set up the interface as a storyboard. So yeah, nothing too complicated for a moment. Then we need to add the Hotwire Native package. It's basically like in Ruby we use gems. Well, Swift use these Swift packages. So it's very straightforward installation. Nothing too complex, and once you have installed it, you will see it in your package dependencies. So yeah, so far so good, not too complicated. And then we need to add the code base. This is in Swift. No? So basically, I set up a root URL with I put it here with my local host, my famous local host, and then I have to create the navigator. The navigator is basically like the main interface is the main interface that interacts with Hotwire Native. This lets you display and navigate web content in the iOS app. No? This makes it feel so natural, very easy. And then we just tell the navigator to go to that URL that we set up previously, no? And voila, we have an iOS app. As you can see in this small GIF, the app feels very natural. It has like a very, you can feel very native, let's say, okay? And what's the cool part about it? I haven't moved a single line of code in my Rails application. So that's pretty much amazing. Yeah, even though it looks like, yeah, we already have the app ready, well, we still have some little improvement to do. Okay, so I want to clarify this. Here, everything above the Brazilian flag is 100% native. So, yeah, as we can see, every single view now is like getting duplicated. The tropical app. Go back to tropical app here, and as we can see it also in that GIF. No, so it looks weird. So we have to change that. Just to let you know, under the hood, Hotwire Native set these titles based on the HTML tag they input. So yeah, it handled it native easily without you doing anything. So we have to change that. How do we change it? Well, it's very easy. It's a small change we will do to the Rails web. We have to make it dynamic titles. First of all, you go to the application layout and add this code, the content for title. And then in each view of your application, we'll add the title you want. It can be like here, or you can have another. So for each view, you will set it up. And what's the result? Now, instead of having tropical app, it will very easily look much better, and you will have dynamic titles. As we can see here in the GIF, now when you click the doors open, the titles show doors open. So yeah, very, very straightforward, very easy, and it's looking good. Now we encounter the second issue we have. We can see that we have duplicated elements in the app. No? As an example, we have agenda at the top, agenda in the middle, and in this view we have two back buttons. So we don't want that. No? Luckily for us, the Turbo Rails gems comes with a helper that helps you with that. It's the Turbo Native app method. So yeah, let's see how I can hide the stuff. There's a couple ways to do this, but I'm going to just only show the way I prefer it, and I think it looks cleaner and it's more nice. Well, the first thing is we're going to create a CSS file. In this case, I call it a native CSS, and we add the class that we want to put there. You know, in this case, I want to hide elements, no, with the display none. Very important to use important to actually hide stuff. Then we go back to our application layout and tell the app, if this app is a Turbo Native app, please add this style sheet, the one we just created. No? And then we just have to add the class to the element we want to hide. So in this example, I want to hide the back button, the red one. I just want to hide that, so I put that code there, and yeah, it pretty much it will hide it. So before, as we can see, we had the two buttons. Then after this small change, we don't have it in the iOS app, but we still have it in the web side. So yeah, that's pretty amazing. Okay. Just as you can hide stuff, you can also show stuff. In this example, while trying to deploy the app in the iOS, Apple told me if you have a sign up in your application, you must have like some way of deleting the account. So I say, okay, I want to add that in the application, but I don't want it to be in the web. So how did I did it? Well, the same way, you can guess. I added this CSS class to the same native file we recently created. And I added it to the element I want to show. Of course, I had to add the display none, because we don't want it in the website, but we do want it in the iOS app. So yeah, so very straightforward. So now each step is getting like we're having like a better version of our application. Many applications will need to have access to the user's camera or some photos. This is another area where Hotwire native shines. All it takes to do this is another HTML tag of input with the element of type file, configured to accept images. And Hotwire will handle the rest. As we can see in this example, yeah, we go to edit profile, we set the image, and yeah, it's very natural, it's all native, it feels good, it works good, so yeah. So far, we haven't done a lot of changes, but we haven't touched the iOS application, so that's for us, for the Rails developers, this is pretty much really easy. Okay? Then we enter more complicated, it's not complicated, but we enter harder stuff. No? The path configuration. The path configuration is basically how you can configure advanced navigations in your app. No? It's basically configured by a JSON file. This JSON file, it has a two-level object, settings and rules. Settings will not be used for this example. It wasn't needed. But basically, it's just setting for the application. The most common case for this is feature flags, where, yeah, you get it. And then we have rules. We're going to use the rules. The rules, each rule has like a pattern that uses regex. And in that, it tries to find a URL linking, matching that URL. And it will tell the application, OK, for this URL, behave like this. I will teach you an example right now. So what we wanted to do is, right now, when you click sign up, it just have like a very natural way, but we can change that. As we can see in the aftermath, when you click in the sign up page, instead of coming in the sides, go to like the top, and it gives you like a very native feel. So yeah, it's another way of navigation. So how do we set up the path configuration? Well, first of all, we're going to need like an endpoint that returns a JSON. So yeah, we basically add a route. I call it configuration. And I create the controller, the configuration controller, and added that returns JSON. As I said before, the settings part, we will not be using it, but the rules. So I want to leave very clear. I'm telling these rules that when the URL matches this registration new, I want you to behave like a model. And when you pull to refresh, you know, in the native app, when you go down, you're going to refresh the page. Well, I'm telling him, in this route, don't do it. And yeah, going back to, OK. Now we have to set up that path configuration into our iOS application. It's very straightforward. Basically, we're setting up, we go to the app delegate part. And we have the local path configuration and a remote path configuration. And you might ask, why do you have a local and a remote? Well, if I wanted to, I could just leave the local one. But it's not recommended. The recommendation is to have both. Why? Because when the app launches for the first time, it's going to like take the local the path configuration first. And then it will ask to the remote path, is the endpoint we just created. And this helps you because if we need to make some change to the path configuration file, if we only have the local path, we will have to add it to the iOS application and then resubmit it to Apple, and it's going to be a pain. So now with this, it's very straightforward. Just modify the endpoint, and the application will get it very easily. And yeah, finally we have to load in Hotwire the path configuration. Yeah, that's pretty much it with the path configuration. As we saw before, now we tell him that in the sign-up page, behave like a model, and when I pull down, don't refresh the page. So yeah, that's the end result for this. Of course, I have to change many more views, not just this one, but this is a very clear example of it. As we go, we're going to go deeper in harder territory, but it's not that hard. Normally, there is no way for the native app to actually know what's going on in the web view. It doesn't have the context. But to overcome this gap in communication, we can use something called a bridge component. A bridge component basically lets you communicate between your native app and your web content, and that's pretty amazing when I realized about this. Every bridge component is basically made up of two parts. We have to remember this, two parts, a web component and a native component. So yeah. So what are we going to do right now? As you can see, currently we have the profile button right here. But I just want to add a native button at the top. Remember that everything above the flag is 100% native. So we want to add this button and interact as a button in my web app, but it's outside. So at the end, we want, when we click it, to redirect us to the profile page. So how did I do this? OK, remember that it requires a web component and a native component. So let's start with the web component. First, we have to install the Hotwire native bridge JavaScript package. It's a very long name. I use it using import maps. It's a better way to add JavaScript packages. Then we have to create a stimulus controller. In this case, I called it a bridge component, where we set up the recently installed JavaScript package. And we have a connect. I will take a look deeper in this code in a few slides later. But yeah, this is basically what we did. And then to this button, to the profile button, I added the data attributes needed to wire up the stimulus controller. No? I'm telling him, OK, use the controller, the bridge component, and use this title, the bridge title, the profile. Remember that, please. I'm telling, in this case, it's profile. Then, at the end, we want to hide this profile button. There's multiple ways to do it. We can add the display none CSS class that we did it earlier. But also, there's another option to let you know if it have these attributes, hide it, one for all. So yeah. Then, in the second part, now that we have the web component, need the native component. For this component, yeah, you're going to need a bottom component. I create a bottom component. This red-lighted code will be explained in the next slide a little bit more deeper. So, but yeah, basically create this component, and we register the component to the app actually know where's the component. So how all this communication between the native app and the web app works? Well, it's very straightforward. At the top, we have our stimulus controller in our Rails application. So basically, when it gets connected, it will send the title. Remember, we put the title. It was profiles. And it will send a callback. So in this case, this callback is click this element. So this will be sent to the native application. Once it's received, we basically set up the top bottom. Here, the first part is setting up the profile at the top, right? And then we tell them, okay, when the user actually press the button, please reply this. So we go to the reply. And basically what it's going to do is going to do the callback we send him. So it's like a cycle. Or, this is just a basic example. We can do a little bit more complicated stuff with this, but you get the idea. It's a cycle, and there's a communication between the JavaScript and your iOS application directly. So that's pretty amazing, actually. Okay. So as we showed before, now if we click in the profile, it's like pressing the button in the web view. So yeah, pretty cool. Well, sometimes when the web-based view and the bridge component aren't just enough because you need more complex stuff that interacts with the SDKs or the APIs, Hotwire also got you covered. In this case, it wasn't needed because our app is very standard way. It's not a very complicated way. An example of this is, let's say, if you're going to use your Face ID or your Touch ID, or you want to create a very complex map or something, well, you can create it. Just keep in mind that if you're going to create a fully native screen, you will need to, well, to know a little bit about iOS development, or Android in your case. So the iOS is done. That was pretty much straightforward, very easy, not complicated. The app is currently available in the iOS store. If you want to download it and see how it feels, how it looks, you can compare it with the PWA. Yeah, the conclusion is very straightforward. Making changes, one of the main benefits that I learned is that making changes to your application is really easy. You just have to change your Rails code, and it will be pushed directly. It will be in the application directly. Because if you create like fully native application, if you want to do a small change, it's a very hard and tedious process to actually be updated the application in the iOS App Store. Also, is one of the main benefits. Remember that I had zero experience with mobile app before. My bad. With this, you can get very quickly into mobile development without actually learning Swift and Kotlin. What are the cons? The cons is that there's not much documentation. Basically, since it's a relative new technology, it's really hard to find documentation about this. It's just the main page, it's just the official page, and the book that I told you guys. I think Chris, maybe many of us know him, the guy from Go Rails. He just recently published a course about it. So it's getting there. So this is like an opportunity for all of us to actually be talking about this and help the community to reach out this point, because this is going to help us a lot to the Rails developers. And another con is that all Rails application that doesn't use new stack or Hotwire, it will struggle a little bit. You will first need to adapt this. For this example, the Rails App Conference, it was pretty much the best case scenario. It uses all the new technologies, but yeah. So thank you very much. I want to thank all the organizers from here. I want to thank to Telos Labs for allowing me to be here. For you guys, thank you very much.